Most people consume content about growth and never actually grow. They read the posts, they watch the videos, they collect the motivation, and then go back to the same life. The same patterns, same excuses, same version of themselves. And this isn't it. The MindForge podcast exists for people who are serious about the mental work, the discipline, the identity, the hard internal stuff that nobody talks about honestly. And this podcast exists to go even deeper. Every episode, we take what's on the page and we crack it open. The stories behind it, the science underneath it, the application you can actually use. If you're looking for hype, you're in the wrong place. If you're looking to be challenged, to think harder, to leave every episode a little more clear on who you're becoming and what it's going to take, you're exactly where you need to be. I'm Caden Floyd. This is MindForge Podcast, brought to you by Warrior X Training. Let's get to work. You picked up your phone 7 times today without knowing why. You told yourself that you'd start that thing, the workout, the project, and you didn't. And then you felt bad about it, but then tomorrow rolls around and the same thing happens again and again and again. That's not a discipline problem. That's a loop. And once you can see it, you can spot it and then interrupt it. Welcome back to another episode of the MindForge podcast. I'm your host, Caden Floyd, and this is episode 15. Today, I'm going to be breaking down the invisible 4-part loop underneath every habit that we have. Cue, craving, response, reward, and how to spot yours in about 60 seconds. The framework comes from James Clear's Atomic Habits, and by the end, you'll have one simple thing that you can apply and try today. So, let's get into it. The other night, I had caught myself reaching for my phone about 6 or 7 times within 15 minutes or so. And for no real reason, honestly. Nothing was even happening. I just kept doing it because I was bored. And what that did, once I noticed it, was send me down a rabbit hole, and I kept landing on the same 4 words. Cue, craving, response, reward. Now, James Clear, I don't believe invented the underlying idea from scratch. He bases a lot of his work off of researchers back in the 90s that found that habits get stored in the part of the brain called the basal ganglia. I think that's how you pronounce it. I probably butchered it, but that's the best I got. But essentially, what it means is that your brain is filing habits away so it doesn't have to think about them anymore. That's why you can drive home from work and not really remember any of it. And what Clear did was he takes the research and he has turned it into a loop that you could use very easily. And he's layered in some newer brain science about why the craving part hits as hard as it does, which I'll get into. But I used to think that habits were about discipline and willpower. You have good habits, that means you have good, strong willpower and discipline. You have bad habits, you have weak willpower and weak character. But it turns out that that story is aimed at the wrong target entirely. So let's walk through the 4 parts one at a time. I'm going to talk a little bit about the science, and then I'm going to give you one thing to remember out of each section so you don't get an information overload. So the first part of the loop is going to be the cue, which is the little signal that's going to tell your brain, hey, something good might be nearby. And a cue can be anything. It could be the time on the clock hitting 9 p.m., your phone buzzing, the house going quiet after dinner, the feeling of stress right before you reach for a snack that you didn't plan on eating, or walking past the gym and suddenly remembering that you meant to go earlier. I used to think the fix was just removing the cue. Turn off the notifications, get rid of the junk food, and hide the snacks. And that does help a little bit, but cues are basically invisible by design, and there's a reason for that. Your brain is constantly scanning your environment for anything that's linked to a reward before. So once it recognizes a familiar pattern, it's going to start the loop automatically before you're consciously aware of anything. And that's the part of why habits eventually stop feeling like decisions at all, because you don't notice the quiet moment right before you pick up your phone, By the time that you're aware that you're doing it, you're already in motion. So the takeaway here is that you can't change a cue that you haven't named. Just try noticing one. For example, every time the house goes quiet after dinner, I reach for my phone. That's it. That's specific, direct, and it's named. Don't try to fix it, but just name it. Because once you can see a cue coming, that's the moment everything else in the loop is going to hinge on. Because right after the cue is where the craving kicks in. Now, the craving, the second part, is where a signal is going to turn into, I want this now. And this is honestly the part with the most interesting science behind it. And here's the twist. You're not craving the thing itself. You're craving what your brain thinks it will deliver, which could be some sort of relief or comfort, connection, escape. There's a specific reason that pull feels so strong. Researchers studying dopamine have found something counterintuitive, which is that dopamine often rises in anticipation of the reward, not when you actually get the thing. That's the craving. It's why a gambler's dopamine spikes as they place the bet, not after they win. Because your brain is basically front-loading the quote-unquote want before it even knows if the payoff is coming. So when you tell yourself, oh, just don't eat the snack, that's rarely ever going to work because you're not craving the food, you're craving the comfort or relief from stress or just something to do with your hands. Blocking the route doesn't erase the craving because the craving was never really about the actual thing. It's the same thing with our phones. We're not actually craving the phone, we're craving a hit of something. Connection, novelty, most likely distraction. The phone is just the fastest road that our brain knows how to get to those feelings. So the takeaway here is ask what the craving's actually for, not just how to kill it and get rid of it. Is it for relief? If that's the case, maybe a walk will get you there. If it's connection, maybe text someone that's real instead of scrolling on Instagram. It's the same craving, it's just a different road. And once you know what you're actually craving, the next question is what you do about it in the moment, which is where most people assume the whole discipline battle happens. Now, this is the third part, which is the response. This is the actual behavior. Picking up the phone, opening the fridge, skipping the workout, snapping at someone you love because you're running on empty. It's the actual response to the craving. So I used to think this was the moment of truth. This is where all the discipline and hard work shows up, right? But the moment where discipline either shows up or doesn't, it actually turns out that by the time you're standing at the pantry at midnight or you're in front of the thing or in the situation that you were anticipating, you've basically already lost that round. Not from weakness, but it's just a rough moment to accept that your best judgment is going to show up for you in that moment. Because what's happening is the real work actually happens earlier, not in that moment of the situation. Deciding the response before the craving even arrives. And a lot of what looks like a willpower problem or willpower is just really friction. This is one of the more practical pieces of science. The less effort a behavior takes, the more likely your brain is to repeat it, almost regardless of how much you actually want it. Less friction toward the habit you want, more friction toward the one that you don't, and the behavior tends to follow the path of least resistance basically every time. Think about it. If your phone is on your nightstand, you're going to check it. But if it's charging in the kitchen, you're probably not going to get up and check it. It's the same person, it's the same willpower, but a different friction. So the takeaway to the response is you want to design it for your worst day, not your best one. And just do something small, like leaving a book on your nightstand instead of your phone, or gym clothes laid out the night before. I've started doing that and it has helped me immensely. Snacks that require prep instead of ones that don't. Just make the good thing the easy thing. and make the bad things slightly inconvenient for yourself. That gets the behavior to actually happen. But whether it happens again tomorrow comes down to this last piece, which is the reward. The payoff that's going to tell your brain, let's do it again. This is where most good intentions quietly die, I feel like. Not because the response is wrong, but because the reward was too slow or too vague for your brain to register. Bad habits pay out fast, often in seconds or minutes, because you open the app, you get a quick hit of dopamine, you eat the thing, and you feel better immediately. But good habits, they pay out in time, in 6 months. And here's the thing, your brain genuinely can't feel a reward that's far away. It needs something closer to now to actually reinforce the current behavior. And that's not a willpower gap or discipline gap. That's a timing mismatch between how habits get wired and how slow most quote-unquote good outcomes actually are. And the rewards from the habits you're trying to change, those are real as well. That's not a discipline failure. It's an honest trade that your brain is making, and it's responding to it exactly the way it's actually supposed to. So, if you go to the gym once and expect feeling great 6 months to carry you back tomorrow, I'm going to be honest with you, that's not going to work. Because your brain can't connect those dots yet. You need a reward that lands today. So the takeaway here is give yourself a small daily win. Not just a promise of one someday, but track it. Check a box off, cross it off the list. Let yourself feel the accomplishment of completion. Because that tiny hit of completion is the bridge between today's efforts and tomorrow's habits. Now, before I wrap this up, I want you to try this right now as you're listening. Think of one habit you keep falling into. Just one. Now trace it backward through the loop. What was the cue? Where were you? What time was it? What happened right before? What were you actually craving? Was it some sort of relief, connection, escape, distraction? And then what was your response to that? The automatic thing that you did? And what was the reward? What was the thing that your brain got out of it, even if you didn't want to do it? And remember, you don't have to fix it. You just have to see it. Because the moment you see the whole loop, you're not inside of it anymore. You're watching it. And that is where every change starts. So there's 4 takeaways from today. Name the cue, know what the craving's actually for, design it for your worst day, and give yourself a real reward now, not just later. You don't need all 4 this week, but just pick the one that hit hardest and start there. Again, full credit to James Clear and Atomic Habits for the framework behind this episode. If it resonated, the book is obviously going to go a lot deeper than I can in this episode. So if this was useful, please send it to one person who keeps saying, I know what to do, I just don't do it. Because they'll know exactly what you mean. Until next time, I'm Caden Floyd. This is MindForge Podcast. Stay in the forge, stay strong, and I'll see you next week. That's a wrap on today's episode. If this hit home for you, go read the companion post over on the MindForge blog at warriorxtraining.com. That's where it all starts. Every episode lives inside one of those posts. So if you want the full picture, that's where you go. Follow the show, share it with someone who needs it, and I'll see you back here next week. I'm Caden Floyd. Stay in the forge.